Hello, everyone, and welcome to WANA Learning. So, WANA Learning is a safe space for all of us to learn and grow. So, what I'm going to ask to do is when we are in the webinar and I ask you to add to comments or to share your views and opinions, I really want you to stay respectful of other people's experiences and viewpoints. And I also want you to feel empowered to add your own. So, for those of you that haven't met me before, my name is Nisa Burrell, and there's a QR code on the screen that has my contact details, including LinkedIn. So please do scan that if you'd like to stay in touch. I'm a director at WANA Learning, and we are really new. I founded this company about 7 weeks ago now, and the purpose is because I'm really passionate in believing that we all want to achieve greater things and we all want to be able to unlock new successes for ourselves. And to do that, we need to pick up new skills. So, WANA Learning is your partner in that, either as a business or as an individual. So, when you're ready to grow, we're going to be here to support you. And we do that through four methods. So, one of them is change management. So, if you've got a strategy that you're trying to land into your business, we can come and help assess where you are currently and provide you a personalized template that's going to help you land that program. We'll also work with your individuals to be able to upskill as change leads, so peer-to-peer leading of that program. We also provide learning solutions. So by learning solutions, I know everyone immediately jumps to things like this webinar or even e-learning solutions, and that is something we offer. But it's also things like micro-learning content such as TikTok videos, podcasts, or even creating games. We offer workshop facilitation, so that's really good for things like ideation and team building. And we will help you provide a fully tailored, fully facilitated workshop to help you achieve your goals. And finally, we offer coaching. So, coaching is all about supporting you and partnering with you to help you identify your goals and unlock the best ways for you to achieve those. So you're not here to learn about WANA Learning. So a business booster is a short 20-minute session where we're going to help share some tips and techniques over different subjects every month. And we know it's hard to fit this time in, and today's discussion is on time management. So I thank you all for joining and for engaging in this conversation. So time management. The first thing about time management is that it starts with being self-aware. So what I'm going to invite you all to do is to use the chat to share why are you here today? What brought you to this topic this month? And do you feel like your time management needs improving? So please do take a few minutes just to kind of share your thoughts. If you'd like to speak up rather than typing, absolutely fine as well. I'm going to reshare my screen again. So this is a phrase that I really like, and it's something that I want you to all kind of consider and keep coming back to. But time management is not just about doing more. We're not creating time in our busy lives or in our work schedule to cram more in. That's not what we're here to talk about today. What we're talking about is how to make the most of the time that you have to be the most effective. So it's not about, doing more. It's about doing what matters the most. And we're going to touch on this later again, but it's actually doing the things that only you have got the skill set and only you can do. So we're going to come back to having a bit of a discussion again, and I'm going to ask you to think about what do you feel causes you to feel like you don't have enough time in the day, and there could be many reasons. So I want you to either again shout out or use the chat. Okay, thank you. There's some good things in there which I think we're going to touch on here as well. But some things that I want you to kind of recognize is there's a lot of different things that can cause us to feel like we don't have enough time and to feel like our time management's impacted. So some of the things that I saw in the chat as well, like task switching, so multitasking. Somebody else saying about, noises at home, so distractions. And sometimes that is actually, the frequency of communication methods. So like if you've got your emails, your phone, and instant messaging all going at the same time as people in person, all of those things can distract you. Somebody mentioned earlier about not knowing what's expected of them. So yeah, unclear direction, unclear kind of communication of the deadline of the task required. All of those things can make you feel like you don't have enough time. But I also want to touch on things like a lack of focus. So that's something that we can control perhaps as well, and the inability to say no. So feeling like you're going to let somebody down if you can't say no. So we've only got 20 minutes today to cover our session, so we're not going to be able to deep dive into a lot of these wonderful topics. We're just going to focus on a couple. So what I kind of want to touch on is the very first thing that you're going to need to do with any time management skills is to learn how to prioritize. You might not be the person in control of the workload. You might be the person that is in control of the workload. So they're going to have different kind of viewpoints here. So the first thing is you're going to need to learn how to prioritize. And to do that, you're going to have to get really good at communicating with your boss, with your client. Actually, what is the hard deadline? Is that really the hard deadline? What are the outcomes that are explicitly required, particularly in contracts? And then understand actually how does that fit with everything else? Very few of us work on one project and one project alone. So how does that work together? And how do you prioritize what you work on? That's going to be really key. And the next thing I'm going to ask you to do is to think about two questions. So, what is in your control? So, what is something you can work on to improve your time management? What is something that's not in control for you that you're going to then have to have a conversation about? And what actions can you take? We always have decisions. There's always something that we can do. And I'm going to touch on a couple of techniques today, but there's going to be more. And we identified earlier, there's lots of things that can make us feel like time is not in our hands. And there are things that we can do to kind of change that. So the first one is minimizing distractions. And this touches on the point somebody made earlier about the noise in the workplace. If you've got a really focused task delivery that you need to get done, is blocking out some time over lunch if your desk is next to the breakout space or canteen the best time for you to focus and minimize your distractions? Probably not. Actually, is being in the workplace best or is being at home best? We live in a world now where actually a lot of us are lucky enough to have a hybrid working situation. And it's actually recognizing which is best in that environment. Some people might be in a house share where somebody's at home playing on the Xbox. Others might be in a really busy open plan office, or somebody else might have an office with a quiet space that they can go shut the door on. You've got to do what you can do in your control to minimize your distractions, whether that's popping on a do not disturb, popping on some headphones. You've got to do what you need to do to be able to focus. You've then got to avoid multitasking. And again, somebody else mentioned this earlier about kind of flipping between tasks. And it's something that, we all, as I mentioned earlier, have different activities and roles that we have to do. And actually sometimes saying, like, this morning I'm just working on this project, in the afternoon I'm just working on that. But then making sure that's ring fenced. You don't kind of jump halfway between into the other afternoon project, and in the afternoon you don't work on the morning. You have to be really clear and focused. So avoiding multitasking can be really difficult. It can be really easy to think, oh, I'm just going to check my emails, but then that takes you down a rabbit hole. So being really considered about what it is you need to do, that is definitely the right priority, and then focus on that. So one of the techniques I want to share with you all today is called a Pomodoro technique. And you may have heard of this because it's been around since the 1980s. But basically, what you do is you decide on the tasks to be completed. So you've got your prioritized list. You know exactly what you need to work on and by when. What you're then going to do is set a 25-minute Pomodoro, as they could. So chunk of time. So I've referred to it in this as a sprint for those of you that have come from an agile background. But what you're literally going to do in that 25 minutes is minimize all distractions and just work on that one task that you've set yourself. And it can be a case that you've written it down as a tick list. So once you've done this 25 minutes, you can cross it off. But at the end of that 25 minutes, you're going to go take a 5-minute break. And by break, I don't mean go check your emails. I mean, go look out the window, do some distance, close spot checking for your eyes, go and get some air, go and make a cup of tea, have a comfort break, get away from the kind of workspace, and then come back to it. You're then going to set another 25-minute timer and again, then have a 5-minute break. And you're going to repeat that 4 times. And at the end of the 4 times, you're going to take a longer break. So 15 minutes, 30 minutes. So what you're doing is you're giving yourself some really kind of intense focus time to progress your task you're working on. But then you're going to give yourself some time to reset again and give yourself time to kind of go, okay, take 5, now back in. And you're going to keep doing that. And that is a way of organizing your day. And even if you set yourself an hour and a half to kind of run a series of these by the time you prioritize and then run your 4 sessions to just try and focus and see how that works out for you. So that's one technique you can do to help work on your time, not just kind of blocking out kind of standard schedules. You're then going to build this in. The other thing comes back to that point I made earlier about, are you the only person that can do that? And there's a couple of things. I think if you're one of these people that might perhaps tend to procrastinate or work on tasks that you enjoy necessarily, and the ones that you least enjoy, you kind of like you wait to the 11th hour before you actually pick them up. This is where it takes a really good analytical mind to kind of stop and say, actually, am I the right person to do this task? So what you're going to do is look for things that others are better suited to being able to doing rather than yourself. Or for those of you that work in an industry where you have hourly charge out rates, as you get more senior, your charge out rate gets more expensive for the client. And actually, is that best value for money for the client if you do that task, or should you pass it on? So, for example, I was going to write a paper, but that paper required research. I might actually go and ask somebody more junior to do that research for me and then put it in a folder. So when I'm coming to it, I can pick that up without having to have gone and done that research. So these are the sort of things that you need to think about. Is it the right task to delegate? You also need to be really conscious of your own limit. So knowing when you're stretched too thin, so knowing that you don't want to say no because you don't want to let somebody down, but actually you're now running the risk of letting them down because you can't deliver the task. Or if you do, you're working late or working over the weekend and we might not be getting the best of you anyway. So recognizing when your workload is getting to that critical point and that you're going to need some support and then communicate that. Don't just recognize it and be like, oh God, now what do I do? Go and talk to people. So if you're delegating or if you're the person being delegated to, you want clear communication. So you want to convey clearly your realistic expectations, the deadlines, the outcomes, what's feasible. And there's going to be questions that you can ask if you're either the person delegating or being delegated to, but you want to make sure it's really, really clear and don't be afraid to say no if you don't think it's possible. As somebody that's delegating, you need to trust your team. And you really need to empower them to take ownership. One of the things that I've often seen is somebody saying, oh, I don't know if they can do that or not. But if you don't give them the chance to do it in the first place, you're never going to know that. So you need to take a little bit of a brave step in being able to trust them. Maybe not everything is the right thing to delegate at the time. So maybe it's somebody that actually you could delegate to if they've done it before, but this is their first time and it's due tomorrow afternoon and you don't have time for them to upskill on it. Don't delegate that task. It's about finding the right thing at the right time, but you do need to trust your team. And the more that you trust them and the more that you give them these opportunities, the more they're going to be empowered and the more that you're going to be able to build trust with them. And the last thing I would say as a delegation tip is to stay connected. Don't just hand over the project and then walk away and don't ask about it. Keep having regular check-ins with them. Ask them questions just like, do you understand everything? Are you getting stuck at all? Can I help? Do you need any advice? Would you like me to kind of check anything for you? Keep that going as you go through. This isn't taking empowerment off them. It's not micromanagement. It's finding the right balance, but it's staying connected because at the end of the day, you delegate that task, you're probably still responsible for it. So having that confidence to go back and check. I touched on this earlier, but actually a good thing about time management is sometimes you can just say no. You don't want to be the person that does it to everything without fully considering. But actually sometimes if you're one of these people that finds that actually I'm just constantly fighting fires, that's all I feel like I do is put out fires. If it's a really brief, unusual situation, like half your team are off sick and the deadline hasn't changed, you're probably going to feel like that. But it's a short-term, unusual scenario. If you find that you're operating on that level constantly, there's a resourcing issue. And sometimes you are in control of that resource and sometimes you're not. And when it's not, it's really important to go and have the conversation with the bosses to say, we just can't do this, it's not feasible. We don't have enough people in, and actually all we're going to do is increase burnout, and actually no one really wants to be the boss that creates that environment. So I think it's really important to have that conversation because it impacts on resourcing decisions ahead and actually recruitment plans for those teams as well. So it's about getting that balance right, but sometimes be empowered, go back and say, I just can't do this. I don't have enough time. Or, try and flip that with a bit of a positive of let's have a conversation about everything else I've got going on and see if there's anything we can adjust or if there's anybody else in the team that we can pass this to. Try and be proactive and helpful, but if you can't do it, you can't do it. So that is it in terms of our time management booster. So this is our first of our subjects. So again, the really short sessions I'll squeeze into your day. Please do stay in touch and you'll hear some more. We do these once a month, but there's other things. We've just scratched the surface. So if there is more and there's more details that you would like to hear about in terms of time management, we do actually have a course at WANA Learning on this, more detailed online e-learning. And we also do have a webinar coming up soon as well, which will take a full 90 minutes. So we'll go into more techniques, more things like the Pomodoro, but we'll explain and we'll actually have a chance to put these into practice. So other than that, thank you very much for joining us today. This will be on LinkedIn, so you can watch it back. But yes, please do stay in touch and let us know what you thought. Thank you.